Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to a telephone town hall meeting hosted by yours truly, Congressman Steve Womack, representing Arkansas's 3rd Congressional District. In my opinion, one of America's premier congressional districts based on all the good things that are coming out of the 6 counties that I represent. And I'm delighted that you've taken some time out of your schedule at home here as we approach the holiday season to spend a little time with us. We've got an hour set aside where we're going to talk about some of the issues and take questions from around the 3rd District of Arkansas. And it is an honor to be able to join you tonight on this telephone town hall meeting. And I speak with gratitude. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving, spent with friends and family. I like to do these telephone town hall meetings because we reach a much wider audience, and it gives me an opportunity to engage a lot more people than just doing something in the district where the venue may have limited participation. Let me say here at the outset that those listening on their phones, if you want to get in the queue to ask a question, all you have to do is press star 3. So star on your phone, which should be down below the 7, but star 3 is how you get in the queue to ask us a question. And then if any of you tonight, and I hope many of you will, that aren't currently signed up to get my e-newsletter, we send it out every Friday afternoon. It's called From the Front. And if you'd like to be a recipient of that newsletter, just simply press star 6, and we'll get you on our mailing list. And every Friday afternoon, whether we're in session or not, you'll get a recap of what's going on as it relates to Congress through my electronic newsletter. And it's a pretty comprehensive piece that my comms team puts out every week, and I strongly encourage you, if you're not getting that every Friday, to hit star 6 and give us the opportunity to add you to the mix. Before I open the floor for questions, I want to give you a quick update on what's going on in Washington. As you know, we endured the longest shutdown in American history when the beginning of the fiscal year started October 1st, and we didn't have an appropriation bill, and we didn't have a continuing resolution signed by both parties and by the president. So we entered into a government shutdown, 43 days. That's a long time. And though not necessarily at the beginning of the shutdown did we feel any hardship, but the longer it persisted, the more hardship that was felt. And particularly with anybody that's drawing a federal paycheck, and that would include our TSA agents out at XNA and down at the Fort Smith Airport, and other federal employees who do great work for our country, food safety inspectors and air traffic controllers, and I can go on and on. Those were some very difficult days for a lot of people. Our military, though got paid in the early stages of it, also suffered some hardship, and we certainly didn't like to see that. So we're still working to recover from that shutdown, and I hope that we don't revisit that, though the continuing resolution that was eventually passed does have us on the clock again, this time the 31st of January. I think it was a waste of taxpayer resources, particularly as it concerns Pentagon planning. You don't just get to October 1st and decide to shut the government down without going into a lot of planning. And so under the threat of a shutdown, the Pentagon planners had to spend a lot of time and wasted a lot of resources in trying to figure out, what the alternative plans were to provide for the common defense for this country. And again, there's no place, more impacted, I think, by shutdowns and what happens with the men and women who serve our country in uniform. CRs are a bad deal for you. They're a bad deal for the country. It's like hitting copy and paste on last year's budget, and not just last year's budget. We're talking about a budget that goes back a couple of years, and the world has changed a lot, and the emerging needs of our country have changed a lot. So continuing resolutions are not an answer. And if they are an answer, it should be only for a limited period of time, a stopgap measure, if you will, so that we can buy us a little more time to finish our appropriation work. But as problematic as they are, a full government shutdown is far worse. That's why I voted for a clean CR back on September 19th, as did most of my Republicans in the House and Senate. I think we had one Democrat vote for it in that September 19th vote. And then eventually, we came out of the shutdown because 8 Senate Democrats joined in with the majority of Republicans to reopen the government after the House had finished its work. So after more than 40 days of a stalemate, we finally got the government reopened, and we passed 3 of the 12 full-year appropriation bills, those being Ag, Ledge Branch, and the Milcon VA bill, all 3 pretty important bills, as are the other 12, or the other 9, when we finish our work, hopefully between now and, say, the end of January. By the way, I'm proud that in those bills, the 3 that we passed that reopened the government, there was $1.3 million in that bill to establish an MRI unit at Mercy Hospital in Berryville, the first in Carroll County. So Carroll County got a big win out of what we were able to accomplish there as we reopened government. And there was about $2.75 million in that bill for the city of Pea Ridge for purposes of building a new fire station. And so the 3rd District of Arkansas surely benefited from the passage of those 3 bills and the reopening of government, and I am very, very proud to have lobbied hard with our leadership to include those 2 provisions. Before I continue now, I want to remind listeners on the phone, if you want to get in the queue to ask a question, just hit *3, and if you'd like to sign up for our e-newsletter, hit *6, and we'll add you to our manifest. Looking ahead, even with the government back open, our work is far from finished. We still have 9 more appropriation bills to pass before the next funding deadline at the end of January. One of those bills, one of the 9, is the bill that I write, the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Appropriation Bill. At the national level, this bill fully funds the Federal Aviation Administration and air traffic control operations, ensures the safety of travelers during the busy holiday season, tackles some of our country's most complex transportation, housing, and transit needs, such as truck parking shortages and homelessness among former foster youth. So we have a lot to get accomplished. I'll be working very hard between now and the end of January to ensure that THUD bill, Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, which is going to be in the neighborhood of about $100 billion bill, I'll be working very hard to ensure that it gets passed. Inside that bill are more benefits to the 3rd District of Arkansas, including money allocated for Highway 112. We know that north-south piece between Fayetteville and Bentonville is critical to help relieve traffic on 71, on I-49, and others. We have $3 million to support the development of the future Interstate 49 down in the Valley area. We've got everything done in the north of the tunnel, but south of the tunnel, as you get down into the Alma, Van Buren, Fort Smith area, we still have about 12 or 13 miles of interstate to complete between Alma and Barling, and of course the bridge is now under construction spanning the Arkansas River. That would get I-49, once all that's done, all the way down from the Missouri border, all the way past Fort Smith, linking back in on 71 South there in Fort Smith. And then in future administrations, we'll see more money put in for the improvement to I-49 going on down to Texarkana. There's money in my THUD bill for other infrastructure projects benefiting Benton County, cities of Farmington, Fort Smith, Huntsville, Mountainburg, Mulberry, and Tawnytown. And there are similar projects in the Interior Approach bill, but everything that we have still pending, those 9 bills are critical that we get signed, passed in the House, passed in the Senate, or conference between the House and Senate, and signed into law by the President. But like most things in Congress, it's not going to be easy. We're up against the clock, and we're working with an even slimmer majority. And we've got roughly 6 weeks of session before our next funding deadline. So here are the numbers. Right now, the House has 219 Republicans, and 213 Democrats. Now, we're going to probably gain another Republican seat tonight, maybe by the time this town hall is over. When the polls close in Tennessee, the Mark Green seat is going to be populated tonight. I expect Van Epps will be the winner there, the Republican. That'll put us back to 220. That will be short-lived because, as everybody on this call probably knows by now, Marjorie Taylor Greene says she's going to resign from Congress on January the 6th. And so in roughly a month, we'll go from what we expect to be 220 back down to 219. Democrats have 213 seats. They'll gain another seat with another special election very soon as well. So the margins are very, very thin. And then, as you know, in the Senate, because of special Senate rules, anything you do outside of a reconciliation bill is going to have to going to meet a 60-vote threshold to overcome a filibuster. And Republicans have 53 seats over in the Senate, so that means you got to have at least 7. And like it was in the previous CR, we had to have 8 because Rand Paul voted against that CR, and we needed 8 Democrat votes to be able to carry the day there. I share this not to paint a bleak picture, but to provide a realistic view of the challenges that we in Congress face in getting these bills across the finish line. So with that, I'm almost prepared to open these phone lines and start taking some questions. I've got one other personal note to share with all of you tonight, and I do this with a heavy heart. For the first 15 years, almost 15 years that I've been in Congress, I have prided myself on being here and being available to vote on every single vote that has taken place in my entire career. And after about 8,800 and some odd votes, successive votes, and a perfect voting record, my wife and I got hit with some pretty devastating news on Halloween Day as we were in the midst of this shutdown, and that is a pretty serious health diagnosis involving my wife of 41 years. And so in order to be able to be at her side as we were going through some of the testing and some of the other treatment conditions that are associated with what she's dealing with right now, it was necessary that a week ago that I spend that time in Northwest Arkansas at her side and caring for her, and not in Washington, D.C., like I had been for 15 years, never missing a vote. On one hand, I'm sorry that I missed those votes, but I'm unapologetic about the reason why I missed those first votes in that entire week, because, in my opinion, family comes first, and I've had a lot of people call me and text me and tell me that they're praying for our family, and I got to tell you, those mean a lot to me. And so tonight, when you put your head down on your pillow, if you don't mind, say a quick prayer for Terry in hopes that what we're dealing with here today, we can muscle through, soldier through, and get back to normal. And so with that said, let's get these phone lines open. Again, *3 if you want to get in the queue. Love to take your questions. Tell me who you are, or you don't have to tell me your full name, but tell me what your name is, where you're from, and let's go straight to the switchboard. So Adam in Fayetteville, I think, is our first caller tonight. Adam, are you there?
Hey, Steve, I'm here.
Oh, good. Yeah, what's your question, Adam? And you're in Fayetteville, right?
Yes, sir. I appreciate you taking the time tonight. I've heard a lot about affordability recently, and hear the assertion from the current administration that affordability is no longer a concern. I see things from John Furner, the incoming CEO of Walmart Global, big presence here in Northwest Arkansas, saying that the cost of Thanksgiving has gone down. And it feels a little disingenuous to share that the like-on-like year-over-year products that are being offered aren't the same. So I'm curious for your perspective on affordability. If you feel like people in your constituency right now are hurting to afford basic goods, or if it's not really an issue right now, that it's just being made up. But appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, listen, Adam, I appreciate the call, and if you want to hang up and listen to the response that I'll give, when you start talking about affordability, you're covering a huge waterfront. There's a lot of input factors that go into it, and some of it's seasonal, and then basic supply and demand models. But sometimes you can kind of get in your own way and be your own worst enemy. And I'm not going to kid you. I hear from people every day, and I do some shopping on my own. I'm not an expert on it, but I hear from people every day that the cost of everything that they basically consume or need in the form of services, that those prices are going higher. And some of this is by location. As you know, in Northwest Arkansas, particularly as it concerns housing, we have high housing costs because we have high land costs. And then on top of all of that, you've got insurance premiums that are skyrocketing. Heard from a constituent today about that very subject. And you've got other input factors that relate to the supply of and demand of goods and services, to include the price of gasoline and transportation. But liability insurance and homeowners insurance, all of these things seem to be going higher. And now we're talking about higher insurance premiums for health care. So when we talk about affordability, it like I say, it covers a big front. And while I would like to think that some of these prices are going to start coming down as a result of relief on the tariff policy and other inputs that seem to be getting a little bit better, but sometimes the reality of any of these positive developments along the cost of goods and services are a little bit delayed in being enjoyed by the consuming public for a period of months. So I think we've got to wait a little bit to see how this settles, but there's no question I think people are still hurting from the fact that the cost of just everyday life, particularly in Northwest Arkansas and the area that I represent, continues to remain relatively high, and it's forcing people to make some very, very tough decisions. We've seen it during the government shutdown when SNAP benefits were being denied and other payments to people on the low income scale, and all of a sudden you had a surge in need for your food banks and your food insecurity people that were trying to address that problem. Churches, into action, and other nonprofits, just jumping into action to help relieve some of that hardship. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and I would certainly believe that the administration would be well advised to keep a finger on the pulse of the cost of everything as we move into the new year. But I agree that affordability continues to be an issue. Let's go to our next caller, and this is going to be David in Springdale. Are you there, David?
Hey, sir.
Hey, David, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for taking my call. My wife and I are both very, very conservative, and we vote, in that way every chance we get. But I have to tell you, I was so disheartened to think that our National Guard was in a location that could very well be dangerous, and the guy had to defend himself with a pocket knife. Now, I'm such a huge Trump supporter, but if that continues, I won't be supportive of the National Guard going anywhere if they're not allowed to defend themselves with their own weapon. That's absurd. How could that happen?
Well, a lot of it is, I think, centers around the rules of engagement and the obvious difficulty in commingling or mixing, if you will, men and women in uniform, i.e. the military, and local law enforcement. Now, some military people have legitimate law enforcement training. Your military police officers, security personnel with the other services have a certain amount of training, particularly where it concerns riots and uprisings and this sort of thing. But for the most part, our men and women in uniform particularly in the National Guard, and I have a bit of authority on that subject, having spent 30 years in uniform at a senior level. They are trained to basically prosecute war in some very difficult circumstances, generally in areas outside the continental United States. Now, on occasion, obviously, we have to use our men and women in military for what we call CONUS duty, but typically, if we're going to prosecute war, we want to fight that. We always want those to be away games. We don't ever want to fight those on the home turf. So, having said that, there should be a very obvious a delineation of capability between what you're going to ask of the National Guard soldiers who are patrolling the streets of Washington and other areas, and you've got to be really, really careful with, with the carrying out of their duties on a daily basis. For example, they're in uniform. They're easy targets. They are in camouflage uniforms. They stand out from the rest of the public, and in many cases stand out even more so than a member of the local police force because they're in camouflage uniforms. As I was quoted the other day in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, one of the challenges I see as a senior officer in the National Guard once upon a time is how you evaluate risk and how you develop a target list, if you will, of the bad guys that you're going to need to be protected from. Because a guardsman on patrol in Washington, D.C. is surrounded by a lot of tourists. You don't know where that threat's coming from. You don't know if there is a threat. And certainly if there is one, you have no idea what it's going to look like or where it's going to come from, unlike you would be, say, if you were in Eastern Europe defending against a Putin invasion in a NATO country. You would be preparing to take on bad guys from Russia, and you'd know who they were and where they were coming from. In this case, you couldn't. My dad deployed a National Guard company back a long time ago in the Kansas City riots, and then Governor Warren Hearns, announced to the world these guys are going to be armed, and they will be permitted to act in defense with their weapons. And I hate it that our men and women in uniform are being used right now in such a way that they really don't have a chance. They become sitting ducks, and this is not a criticism of the president's desire to want to have safe streets in Washington, D.C. at all. It's just that we have to be careful not to put them in a situation where they become very vulnerable and subject to the whim of a radicalized person of any type. And worse yet, somebody that was allowed into this country after helping, I guess, our men and women in uniform in Afghanistan, and then had a special immigrant visa or whatever the mechanism was, or applied for asylum. I guess he applied for asylum and was granted asylum under the Trump administration in the spring a year ago, and then carries out this horrific attack that went after two of our West Virginia Guard people. So I'm not totally opposed to their use, but I think you have to put them in a situation where any chance that somebody could take a pot shot at them would be met with immediate resistance and a response equal to what they were facing. And I think there's a lot to be learned about what happened a few days ago on the streets of Washington, D.C., and God forbid that should ever happen again. So those are my thoughts on it. We do want safe streets. In some of these areas where we have, areas, no-go areas in some of our bigger cities because of some of the policies advanced by, very liberal mayors. Look, the president's doing everything he can to make sure that America is a safe place to live, work, and play and raise your families. And the use of the military is, of course, one of those tools, I guess, that they believe is necessary in order to be able to carry out that mission. So we'll see if there's if there's any more that comes as a result of that, now we got Arkansas Guardsmen in D.C., and I hope to be visiting with them very soon as they've made their way to the nation's capital, and we pray for their safety and in hopes that they can come and do their mission and return home safely to their families. Thanks for the call. All right, we've got, I think, Scott in Rogers, I'm told. Scott, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Steve.
Hey, thanks for calling.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the call, and hope all the best for you and your wife as she battles through the situation she's going through. So first of all, I want to say that to you.
Thank you.
My question is around health care. And so Obamacare was passed in March of 2010, right? And there's positives and negatives to every policy, right? You can nitpick one way or another. But increase in health care continues to go up in this country astronomically, especially in the last couple of years. When is Congress really going to take a hard look at health care and figure out something that's across the board, because it is way out of control? And 10 years from now, when I try to retire, I don't even know if I'll be able to afford to, because health care is going to be so expensive.
Scott, that's a great question, and I wish I had an answer that would be satisfactory tonight, because I too am at a loss as to what is the best mechanism to either modify or repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, which we found out, I think, all too late that it was anything but affordable, because you had to put subsidies on it to begin with. There were subsidies in the very beginning that I think took effect like back in 2014, and then in 21, in the midst of COVID, the Democrats who were in charge at the time under Biden instituted what we call enhanced tax credits. These are for people making above the 400% of federal poverty level that were qualified to begin with. Anybody above that level were able to enjoy tax credits for 2 years, 21 and 22. And then in 22, in another bill under Democrats, they reinstated them for 2 more years and made them subject to sunset at the end of December 2025. So here we are within a few weeks of these enhanced subsidies expiring. Now, I have phone calls from people who do not understand that we're talking about the enhanced subsidies, not the original subsidies. So what happens at the end of this year, if nothing happens in Congress, is that anybody making up to 400% of federal poverty level will still enjoy the tax credits associated with the original Affordable Care Act. But anybody above the 400% of FPL will then lose that enhanced tax credit. Now, during the shutdown, the Democrats, bless their heart, they railed against us for suggesting that they should be allowed to expire, when it was the Democrats themselves, the very people critical of us, were the people who put the expiration date on it and even gave them those enhanced tax credits. And another example as to how, when you start a government program, in this case enhanced tax credits for Obamacare, it's hard to take that away, even if you put a sunset clause on it, that there will always be people wanting to renew it and extend it, forever and ever. So they're not permanent. They were designed to be able to get us past the COVID era and into the end of 25, and right now they're set to expire. Senator Thune has agreed to allow for a vote on something related to the enhanced tax credits as part of reopening the government. I'm still looking for what that provision will look like and for how long it will be. My guess is between now and sometime at the end of this calendar year, this month, that there will be a proposal put forward that both the House and the Senate are going to get an opportunity to weigh in on. I want to see what that proposal looks like before I opine on it. But I am also sympathetic to the fact that, as you say, Scott, these premiums are going higher and higher. And the conditions that you are having to accept with your health care, like high deductibles and lifetime caps and those kinds of things, are beginning to infiltrate that system, where the health care coverage that you have is actually nothing more than maybe a catastrophic plan. So we have a lot of work to do on it. I'm not on the relevant committee. That is an Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means area of jurisdiction. I'll have to rely on my friends on those two committees. Brett Guthrie runs the Energy and Commerce Committee. He's a good friend of mine out of Kentucky. And on the Ways and Means, Jason Smith out of Southeast Missouri is the chairman of that committee. And I'll have to wait and see exactly what the leadership and those two committees come up with that will pass muster with the White House, because you still have White House consideration, because President Trump will have to sign it, and to see what input we can get from our friends on the left. Will Democrats be able to sign on for whatever we come up with? But I'm with you. I know these premiums are going higher. It's up to Congress to try to figure it out. But right now, I don't see what relief is in sight, and until I see that, it's going to be very difficult to issue an opinion. But I do appreciate the call, and I sympathize and empathize with a lot of people. And I'll say this about healthcare, too. There's a lot of people out there that are ready to retire from their jobs, that have major medical coverage with their company, that are choosing not to retire, not because they're not ready to retire. It's because their health care is that important to them, and they've got a company plan that suits their family, and they can ill afford to retire and lose that coverage. And I'd hate to see a country continue down the road that where the only consideration being made right now as to whether you retain a job or not is because of your health care, but I know it's there. All right, we have a poll question tonight before we take another call, and we want your input on this. When I ask a quick survey of all of our participants, and the question is, back to the COVID era enhanced Obamacare subsidies. Should Congress extend those enhanced subsidies? Now, let me remind you, we're not talking about the original subsidies for people at 400% of federal poverty level and below. And by the way, what is 400% of FPL? It's about $128,000 a year for a family of four. That's 400% thereabouts of the federal poverty level. We're only on this poll question. The only question we're asking is, should Congress extend the enhanced subsidies for those making over 400% of FPL? And if you will press 1 for yes, 2 for no, and if you're not sure, if you don't have an opinion on it, press 3. So yes is press 1, no to continue those enhanced subsidies, press 2, and if you're unsure, press 3. And by the end of this conversation tonight, we'll have an opportunity to tell you how that poll question turned out. We have an online question that I want to get to, and it's David from, do we know where David's from? I don't guess we do. Says, Congressman, this week I've been reading and hearing about Tyson not renewing contracts with chicken farmers in northwest Arkansas. I've heard a lot of different opinions, and I know it's related to the Oklahoma Attorney General as well, but who is to blame? Why would Tyson cancel those contracts with hardworking farmers? Any insight would be greatly appreciated. Well, I don't know a lot about it except this. I know we've been in a running feud for years with Oklahoma regarding the Illinois River watershed. As you know, the west side, most of northwest Arkansas flows into the Illinois River watershed, and the headwaters are on our side, and they flow into Oklahoma. So Oklahoma gets a vote on what the effluent levels can be inputted into the streams that flow into the Illinois River. I'm not a scientist, but and I may get some of this wrong, but you get the essence. So for the watershed that flows on into Oklahoma, any land application of poultry any point source pollution discharged by wastewater treatment plants into these tributaries. All of that flows into Oklahoma, and Oklahoma has set a very high standard for what they're willing to take from Arkansas. And sadly, this whole issue has morphed into a political football in the race for Oklahoma governor. As you know, the current governor, Stitt, is term limited, and there is a real, we have a saying for it. This is a family event tonight, I won't say it, but we have a real shouting match going on between the candidates for Oklahoma. So the Oklahoma Attorney General, Gettner Drummond, who's running for governor, is adamant about using the lawsuit against Northwest Arkansas poultry companies as kind of a populist political weapon in his governor's race. And Governor Stitt, who's term limited in 26, and Drummond have sparred over this issue. So here's what Tyson has said. They said, all right, we've got, I don't know, it's better part of 100 growers in this region whose farms are impacting the tributaries that flow into Illinois. And so one by one, as these contracts expire, we're not going to renew them. They're not canceling contracts, to my knowledge. I might stand corrected on that, but I don't think so. They're just saying at the end of the contract period, we're not going to renew because of the ongoing litigation between Oklahoma and Arkansas. It's unfortunate, but politics has reared its ugly head in that governor's race, and it has become a political football and a key issue in that race. I have a heart for the men and women who are producers, ag producers in my district. We got the top 2 income producing counties in all of Arkansas, right here in the 3rd district with Benton and Washington County. And many of these people have poultry operations and cattle operations and the like. And it just makes sense for us to be able to use the best management practices that we know, and we do very well, in land application of poultry litter for purposes of growing forage for our livestock and the like. And but apparently it is producing enough of a I guess it's nitrogen. I'm not a scientist, but the phosphorus levels, the things that are going into those tributaries that are flowing into Oklahoma have to reach can't be above a certain level, or else you can be in violation of federal laws. So I think our cities have done a very good job of investing the kind of money necessary to change their treatment protocols and improve the effluent going into those streams. I know our farmers have done a really good job of utilizing best management practices. I mean, there are certain limits as to how close to a stream you can be as you do the land application. All of this is being done, I think, in a responsible way with best management and the latest in technology. But sadly, Oklahoma has a vote in this thing, and it's become a big issue in the race for governor of Oklahoma. And with that, I'm just going to leave it now to the Tyson folks to be able to explain what they're up against and why they're having to take this action. In the meantime, I would like to think that there would be other opportunities for some of these growers to link up with another poultry company or find another way to execute the ag business that they're in with a limited hardship as a result of losing a contract with Tyson. All right, let's go to Centerton, Arkansas. Gene, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good evening. I just got a quick question for you. You talked an awful lot, about the budgeting process. And I'm an old guy. I've been through this a long time. We haven't had a real budget in the United States for how many years? Do you know? 8, 9, 10? Because we keep doing these continuing resolutions.
Okay, well, let me say this.
Yeah. Yes.
At the risk of sounding like I'm patting myself on the back, when I was House Budget Chair in 2018, the FY19 budget that I produced, and I've got a copy of it up here on my shelf, actually was a legit budget And
Well, that's great. I missed that one.
It provided relative balance in the budget within the 10-year window. I think we did it in 9 years without gimmicks and without a lot of nonsense. But the problem was, Gene, in my budget, I had to do something with our entitlement program that became very unacceptable to our leadership at the time. And here, let me tell you what the change that I advocated for was, and that was to raise the age of eligibility for Medicare to be consistent with Social Security, because right now it's 67. Medicare is 65. So what I said was, we're going to buy us more time on the Medicare question by raising the age of eligibility. Well, because I was messing with Medicare, got a lot of hate mail, and the leader at the time, Kevin McCarthy, said he couldn't put that budget on the floor because it would get, we'd get criticized for messing with Medicare. But this is what I'm going to tell you, Gene, and then I'll answer your question. And that is 2/3 of what this federal government spends every year, and we're going to spend $7 trillion this year. 2/3 of that is entitlement spending. It's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and net interest on the debt. 2/3 of it. Now, while we're going to spend 7, our income stream is 5. So we already have a $2 trillion hole in our outlays. And the entire discretionary budget that the appropriators and the rest of Congress has an annual crack at is only $1.6 trillion. So even if you cut out all of the discretionary spending, and that's military spending, that's education, that's cancer research, that's on and on, everything on the discretionary budget, if you cut it all out, you'd still have a $400 billion hole in your budget. So my argument all along has been, we either need to deal with the entitlement programs and swallow hard, take the heat, and take the tough votes, and restructure those programs for long-term sustainability to include any revenue enhancements that we think we got to make, any cuts to the programs that we got to make, and then along with growth and economic activity by pro-growth policies, we can begin the process of moving toward a balanced budget. Now, here's the answer to your question, and that is, why are we still dealing with CRs and potential shutdowns? It's because the budget process is outdated and it's no longer useful. We're still dealing with the 1974 Budget Act. So back in 2018, I led a 16-member bicameral and bipartisan commission, the Joint Select Committee on Budget Process Reform, and we came up with a set of reforms that I think, and I've got the document on my shelf right here to my right, I think if we instituted those policies today, that we would rid ourselves of continuing resolutions, big omnibus packages, and threats of shutdowns. Because what I advocated for was to be more like our states, do a biennial budget at the beginning of a congressional term or a presidential term, and then do annual appropriations and still have the ability to do reconciliation annually, but do a biennial budget where we set our top-line numbers early on in the 2-year period and begin the process immediately of doing year number 1 in appropriations, and once finished, move right into year number 2. So here we are today, it's December, and we are almost 3 months, well, we're 2 months plus into the new fiscal year, and we're still operating off of the budget from 2 years ago. So I think that if I had my way, leadership would be taking up the issues that we brought in 2018, biennial budget, annual appropriations, annual reconciliation. Give us an opportunity to vote that across the floor. Give it expedited procedures in the Senate so it's not subject to a 60-vote filibuster. And I believe we could get 218 votes in the House and 60 or 51 votes in the Senate to be able to change the budget process once and for all. And I think that would go a long way toward us taking the government out of this the gymnastics of having to deal with these shutdowns. That's my answer to it. I'll continue to try to champion that cause, but right now I don't have an audience with leadership. All right. Now, what's this? Before next question, ask them to press *6 to sign up for the newsletter. All right. So *6 if you want to sign up for our newsletter. All right. Thank you, Sarah. I've got it. By the way, I've got a great team here. I've got Sarah, my comms director, Tomasetti. I've got Zach Engel. I've got Grace Vandergrift here. She's my Florida Gator. And Sean Perez, my military fellow's here tonight. Bo Stuckey from Fayetteville, he's here tonight. Katie Kaler is back here as well, helping with this town hall meeting tonight. Folks, you guys are well served by these young people that give their all for Arkansas's 3rd District, and I am very, very proud of them. All right, let's go to Dean and is this Dean? Dean in Springdale.
Hi, thank you, Congressman Womack. As a fellow veteran myself, you touched on it a little earlier, explaining the rules of engagement pertaining to the National Guard. And what I'm trying to do is make sense of the U.S. strike on the Venezuelan boats. Given your role on the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense, you have a front row view of how our military operates and is held accountable. We have the most capable military in the world, which means we're expected to operate at a higher standard. Yet the stated justification referenced as fentanyl for these attacks on the boats and the follow-on actions that have been reported, I just want to get your interpretation of these reports as they pertain to international law and what guardrails or oversight mechanisms should Congress consider to maintain U.S. credibility and ensure our forces remain within the established standards?
Yeah, well, hey, Dean, that's a great question, and I'll do my best to kind of explain to the extent that I can. First of all, I will admit up front, I have not been down in the bowels of the Capitol where a lot of the intelligence briefings happen. My colleague from Jonesboro, Rick Crawford, chairs the Intel Committee. I have not been privy to any of the classified intelligence, and if I had been, I wouldn't be able to disclose it here. But this is what I would say. I think one should be easy and capable of assumption that when the U.S. military carries out a strike of any type, that it has been properly vetted and that it comes from a collaboration. It's not willy-nilly. It's not, hey, there's a boat, let's just go take them out. It's got to be based on certain conditions that fit within the scope of whatever that area of operations demands. Now, I have said repeatedly as a Defense Subcommittee member, and hopefully the next chairman of the Defense Subcommittee on the House Appropriations Committee, that the biggest threat that impacts my district from the global perspective is really not CENTCOM, though it's important. It's really not AFRICOM, which is pretty important. It's not the Pacific Theater, that the Indo-Pacific region that is obviously a key player in the world today. The impact on the 3rd District of Arkansas mostly comes out of SOUTHCOM. And it's out of that South American, that southern hemisphere, because of the narco-trafficking that is taking place. And the president said in his approach to his second term that this was going to be something that would be a priority of his administration. And he is making good on that promise. He has, through diplomatic sources and through other military means, we have implored the people, whether it's China or whether it's Venezuela or wherever these drugs are originating and then finding their way into our country. He said it's going to stop or we're going to take decisive action. And then I think the placement of the carrier group in close proximity and the strike force that is present outside the boundaries of Venezuela is pretty intimidating. And it should not surprise anybody that is running drugs that is purposed in coming into this country is going to be dealt with from a pretty strategic military force. Now, that said, every strike that takes place is going to be vetted, it's going to be carefully analyzed, and it's got to fit within a certain rule of engagement. And I promise you that in every single one of these circumstances, there is a JAG officer sitting right next to that commander that's going to issue that order that is opining the legality, not just the lethality, but the legality of that particular strike. Until I see credible evidence through intelligence channels to the contrary, I'm going to assume that the strike was legitimate, the target was legitimate, and that the purpose that it was being carried out was consistent with the presidential directives. And I have not seen anything yet to convince me otherwise. Do I have concerns about it? You bet I do. If there is a suggestion that we are just taking pot shots at boats out in the middle of the Caribbean or any other sea for that matter, then without having gone through the process that I just outlined, then I certainly would have some really serious concerns. Now, they were pointing at Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, about this latest strike, but that order actually came from the admiral who was in charge. And again, in every strike, you can expect that there is adequate legal representation advising the command group on whether or not that is something that would carry the legal weight. So that said, I want to be careful not to second-guess the administration in what it's trying to do, and it shouldn't surprise anybody because the president said that that this is exactly what he would be doing. All right, poll question. Extend the Obamacare enhanced subsidies. Now, these are not the original subsidies. These are the enhanced. 27% say yes. 53% say no. 20% are not sure. So most of you have said we shouldn't be extending subsidies for people that are making in excess of 400% of the federal poverty level. All right, let's go to Ron in Farmington.
Yes. Hey, this is Ron Curran. I used to live in Rogers there for a long time. You did a good job with Mayor, and I appreciate your service.
Hey, Ron, that was the best job I ever had. Best job I ever had.
And I
being a
really
mayor.
appreciate your wife's sickness. I just come through a lung transplant. I was dying, and they transplanted my lungs. I'm 5 months out, and Steve, there is power in prayer, man. Power in prayer. I wouldn't.
And I'll tell you, Ron, we'll continue to pray for your well-being. Thank you.
And I'll sure put your wife on my prayer list too. So
thank you.
But the question I had is, why do we have to act like Republicans, Democrats? Why can't we do what's best for the United States, for America as a given? And my other question would be, as incumbents, do you think they have any fear of not being elected again because some of the inactivity and the government being shut down for a long time?
Who might have a fear of not being reelected? Who?
The incumbents, the people that are up there now, the Senate and the people. You've done such a great third district. You've represented us well, and I'll definitely keep you on my ballot. But some of the inactivity and some of the things that go on just it's appalling to the American people, I think.
Well, let me tell you, Ron, one of the concerns I have is that right now, because of the political divisions and because of the lack of productivity by Congress, I think you're going to see more and more members of Congress come out of these holidays that are upcoming and decide not to stay. And we're going to lose some really good members. Already have. I mean, Mark Green, who we're replacing tonight, dear friend at West Point graduate, great friend of mine, super member from Congress, but, he took a private sector job and left. And we've got other people. Jody Arrington, my buddy from Lubbock, Texas, who was a bright, shining star out there in Congress, has decided to not run again. So, I mean, we're going to lose some really, really good people. And I think part of it is because of the degradation of the body politic. As you say, it's just nothing but a bunch of finger pointing up here. And Congress needs to be back to the business of doing what's right for the American people. And that doesn't mean it's got to be an all-Republican bill or an all-Democrat bill, it's going to have to be, and this is what I tell my leadership here. I've seen this movie over and over again about how we put something on the floor, we pass it in the House, it doesn't go anywhere in the Senate, and then the Senate does something, comes back to the House, and then we get wrapped around the axle, and ultimately we have a bipartisan solution. So here's the deal. As I said earlier, 53 Republicans in the Senate, you got 219 Republicans in the House. You don't have a lot of margin. So it tells me that whatever the final solution is for any bill, whether it's funding the government or dealing with immigration or dealing with health care, any bill that's going to have success is going to have a bipartisan flavor to it, because you just don't have the margin to overcome the naysayers who are out on the fringe areas. There are radical leftists on the Democrat side, dang near communists, that are not going to vote for rational, reasonable policies advanced by Republicans. And then there are people on the right, hardcore, ultra-right-wing, my way or the highway Republicans, who are not going to like, and look, I like Rand Paul. He's a great guy. And I like Tom Massey. He's a great guy. But they never vote for any appropriation bills because it spends federal dollars, and they're not for that. So you're going to have to overcome thin margins, and that tells me that Republicans are in control today and are going to have to get Democrat votes to advance anything important. And if in the midterms we lose either the House or the Senate, it tells me that even more so, you're going to have to be able to advance legislation that can appeal to a broader audience, and that means it's going to have to be bipartisan in nature. Until you can get to a more bipartisan solution without either side having a significant majority, we're probably going to be stuck in the present, and right now it's not serving the American public very well. But I do appreciate the call. It is the biggest threat facing the Republic as I see it, and that is the divisions in the body politic that makes even doing the most basic of our responsibilities, passing budgets, dealing with appropriations, among the most difficult things that we do. It shouldn't be that way, and I'm going to do everything I can for the remainder of this term and hopefully get it reelected for the next term to bring some sanity back to Congress. All right, now we're out of town. Allison Booth, she's one of my Oklahoma girls. She's here tonight as well, and I overlooked her when I was talking about my great staff. And Allison, Allie, as I call her, I didn't want you to think that I was not appreciative of your work. All right, here's our last question. Michelle in Winslow, are you there?
Yes. Hi.
Hi, Michelle.
Thanks for taking my call. And I wanted to let you know that your family will be in our prayers for sure every day.
Thank you so much.
I adopted a boy with cerebral palsy. I teach in Mountainburg, and he prays for our leadership every night. It's really cute.
God bless you. God bless you.
He's a good kid. So I had a real quick comment that I wanted to tell somebody since I met with our last representative. Obamacare killed teacher insurance. Just killed it. It was a good program, and it just destroyed it, and it's never went back. But my question was, I'd like to understand and be able to explain to my students what's going on with the tariffs, how it benefits the American people, because there's so much conflicting stuff and if it's anything about Trump, they're just also negative, so you can't believe anything you see on TV. And my students ask me these questions a lot, and with tariffs, I don't really understand them, probably like I should, but I would like to at least defend or tell them the truth about what's happening with tariffs and why, it's like they're all upset because they can't get their 42 little cheap crappy China items, for what they did before, which we don't need any more of that crap in our country, I don't think. But that's all I have. That's the only opinion I have, because I really don't know how to explain to them what President Trump is doing with the tariffs and how it's going to benefit us in the future. So.
All right, Michelle, I'm going to make a commitment to you. Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. You teach at Mountainburg?
Yes.
I always need a good reason to go to Mountainburg. So I tell you what you do. You sometime, if you want me to come down there and personally, when I got some time, to visit one of your classrooms and talk to those kids, I would love to do that. And if there's any other teachers on this line tonight, if you think that an appearance by me in front of your class would help kids understand in a nonpartisan way. I mean, I'm not there to promote me or anybody else. I just want to engage young people in trying to make them, inspire them to be more understanding of how their government works and take a bigger role in it. And I love doing that. So on tariffs, real quickly, here's what I'm telling you. Tariffs are a tax, and a tariff is a good tool to have in the toolbox to accomplish certain things. So if you've got a country like China, say China's dumping a lot of product in America at subsidized rates that are putting the pressure on American manufacturers for steel or stuff like that, you might want to use the tariff policy to punish. If you don't have a good trade balance with some of your trading partners, you might want to use a tariff policy to bring them to the negotiating table. If you've got countries out there that are manipulating their currency in such a way that it makes our ability to produce and sell around the world costlier, then a tariff is a good tool to use. They bring people to the negotiating table, and sometimes it's in a punitive way, sometimes it's in more of a business way. Hey, let's have a discussion about this and come to terms. Tariffs, I say, are a tax, and that tells me that if you're going to put a tariff on something that's coming into this country, then you're going to raise the price of whatever that item is, and who's going to pay it? It's going to be ultimately the consumer downstream. Now, for a long time under the tariff policy, Walmart, as an example, I think absorbed some of the higher costs associated with importing things from other countries, China and the like. But at some point in time, I think Doug McMillan said to the president, we can't do this anymore. We're going to have to raise our prices. And that just makes sense. They have a responsibility to their shareholders. They're trying to keep the prices as low as they can. But if we're going to continue to tax at a very high rate products that are coming into this country that we don't produce on our own, then that's going to be a challenge. Now, one of the flaws in a tariff policy is if you're using the tariff to try to bring more of that manufacturing back to your country, then you need to be realistic about whether that's even possible. Can we bring, say, electronics back to the U.S.? Probably that's a long shot. I mean, that's best done right now, more affordably done in a lot of these Asian countries. Are we going to bring textiles back to this country? I don't have an answer for that. We can try, but I don't know if there is a long-term solution there. There are things that are being done overseas that because of the cost of labor or because of the cost of doing business in America or insurance or other regulatory issues that other countries don't have to deal with. I mean, some of that is going to be naturally done elsewhere, offshore, and not in this country. So we've got to get serious if we're going to bring this manufacturing back to our country, and we've got to provide the kind of environment that the people that are going to invest in this stuff can actually do it, make a profit on it, and justify the investment. So, hey, it's 5 after. I've gone a little bit over, and I want to thank all of you for being here tonight and joining us. If we didn't get to you, stay on the call, leave a message for us, and this team that I bragged on earlier, they're going to go through these calls, and we'll try to get a response out to you very soon. Watch our social media at rep_Steve Womack, or sign up for our e-newsletter, or go to womack.house.gov, and we'll keep you up to date. I do want to give you a couple of phone numbers for you to think about. If you've got a constituent service issue, like if you've got an issue with Social Security or the VA or Medicare or whatever the federal program is, or if you need your passport updated, whatever, I want you to call my local office And in Northwest Arkansas, it's pretty simple, 479-464-0446, 479-464-0446. And then if you've got a policy question, for example, if you wanted to talk about healthcare policy or education, then you should call Grace. Grace, say hi.
Hi.
Grace is my Florida Gator and soon to be my legislative director, and she is the subject matter expert on my staff for all those things, even though she graduated in Gainesville, Florida. But our number here at the office is 202-225-4301, 202-225-4301. That's been the 3rd District office number since John Bozeman, maybe since John Paul Hammersmith had this job. Anyway, what an honor and a privilege to serve all of you. Thanks for the prayers for my wife. Keep the faith. I hope you have a great holiday season. Look forward to seeing all of you as soon as we possibly can. And God bless you all, and God bless America. Good night, all.